Hi everyone, it's Hannah B here. I hope you all had a lovely Easter weekend and you're enjoying the sunshine. This week I'm going to do a recap lesson on genre in case any of you are still struggling to come up with an idea for your own short story. Remember, there's exactly 1 week left to submit your stories. They're due on the 27th, which is next Monday, and if you haven't already done so, why not take a look back at the previous lessons Kyle and I have prepared for you to get your mind moving and get a little bit of inspiration. Today I'm going to give a quick recap of genre and creative writing and how effective it can be to experiment with the diverse literary genres we have available to us. If you haven't already done so, if you go over to the Super Long Summer website page and click on the PowerPoint that I've made to go along with this lesson plan, and follow along as I'm reading through. So, first of all, it's important to consider what a genre is. Well, genre is the organisation of literature into categories based on the type of writing the piece demonstrates, through its content, form, or style. There are 4 main categories of genre in literature. These are drama, poetry, nonfiction, and fiction, many of which we've already studied before. Genre is important in order to be able to organise writings that allows the reader to figure out whether or not the events being written about in a piece are factual or imaginative. It also distinguishes the purpose of the piece and the way in which it is to be delivered. For example, plays are meant to be performed and poetry can be spoken aloud, whereas novels and memoirs are meant to be read. Let's take a closer look at the 4 main genres in literature. Poetry. Poetry is a major literary genre that can take many forms. Some common characteristics that poetry shares are that it's often written in lines that can have metre and rhythm. These lines are put together to form stanzas, which are the same as paragraphs. Poetry often relies heavily on figurative language and imagery, like what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. For example, metaphors and similes that allow it to convey meaning and create images for the reader. Another literary genre is drama, which is often referred to as plays or theatre and is performed often in front of an audience. These are written as scripts and contain dialogue and stage directions for the actors to follow. Another literary genre is fiction, which is probably the most common that we've come across. This is a type of prose that is not real, and authors have the freedom to create a story based on characters or events that are products of their imagination. While fiction can be based on true events, the stories they tell are imaginative in nature. Like poetry, this genre also uses figurative language to bring its story to life. However, it is more structural in nature and often more closely follows grammatical conventions. Fiction often follows the plot pyramid that we've studied in the past, that goes exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. This is likely the genre that you will follow for your own short story. However, don't be intimidated to use the others and experiment with them as well. Lastly, nonfiction is also a literary genre. It's another type of prose, however it is factual rather than imaginative in nature. Because it is more factual and less imaginative, it may use less figurative language. However, it varies from piece to piece and it's not completely unheard of. It usually tells a story through memoir, or however it could be strictly factual in nature, like a history textbook or a biology textbook. So within these 4 broad genres, we also have subgenres. These are the kinds of stories which could be fictional or non-fictional that you will have come across whether at school or in the books that you are reading yourself. The subgenres of fiction are fantasy, a story with monsters, magic, or characters with superpowers that uses common techniques such as illusion, alliteration, and allegory. An example of fantasy stories are Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings. Science fiction is another subgenre. It's a story based on the impact of science, either actual or imagined. It can be set in the future or on other planets, often contains aliens, robots, and or other futuristic technology. Since these stories are so imaginative, anything is possible, and they contain a wide range of futuristic concepts. Some examples of these are Back to the Future, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Star Wars. Another subgenre of fiction is horror. a story that can be frightfully shocking, terrifying, or horrible, and creates a feeling of fear in both the characters and the reader. These stories can feature supernatural elements such as ghosts, witches, or vampires, or they can address more realistic psychological fears. Some examples of horror stories can be Goosebumps, It, or The Nightmare Before Christmas. Mystery stories are another subgenre of fiction. These are stories that deal with the solution of a crime or the unravelling of secrets, or anything that is kept secret and remains unexplained or unknown. These stories primarily focus on building tension through sensory imagery and suspense. Some examples of mystery stories could be Scooby-Doo, Nancy Drew, or Sherlock Holmes. And we also have historical fiction, which is another subgenre of fiction. And this is a story that is set in the past and based on real people and or real events. For example, Braveheart, Mary Queen of Scots, or Titanic. The last subgenre of fiction that we're going to cover is folklore or fairy tales. These are stories that usually have a narrator or will be retold or adapted by the author. They're typically passed down by word of mouth rather than being written in books, although sometimes people write down collections of folklore in order to preserve the stories of a particular community. Some examples of folklore or fairy tale could be Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, or Little Red Riding Hood. As well as subgenres of fiction, we also have subgenres of poetry. The most commonly used are blank verse, which is poetry written with a precise metre, however it does not rhyme. Epics, an epic poem which is a lengthy narrative work which typically details extraordinary journeys and adventures of characters from a distant past or time. Rhymed poetry, which is different from blank verse and follows rhyme and can follow different rhyming schemes. Free verse, poetry that lacks a consistent rhyming scheme, metrical pattern, or musical form. A sonnet, which is a 4-line poem, typically concerning the topic of love. An ode, which is a tribute to an object, person, or place to show your love. A limerick, which is a 5-line poem that consists of a single stanza, A, B, B, A rhyme scheme, and whose subject is a short, pithy tale or description. Lastly, we have a eulogy, which is a poem that reflects upon death or loss. Traditionally, it contains themes of mourning, loss, and reflection. However, it can also explore themes of redemption and consolation. We also have subgenres of drama. These subgenres are play, which is a piece of writing divided into acts and scenes and is performed with actors, sets, and costumes. Comedy, which often has a happy ending and tends to be humorous. And tragedy, which often ends in death and sadness. Lastly, we have subgenres of nonfiction. Some subgenres of nonfiction can be informational writing, media, which explains something that is actual, real life, and contains facts, for example, textbooks, magazines, and newspapers. Essays, so short literary compositions that reflect the author's point of view based on a particular theme or subject. These can often be argumentative or narrative. Autobiography, a life story written by oneself, or biography, writing about someone else's life. So in conclusion, these are the most common genres used in literature. Remember not to be scared of any that you haven't come across before, but instead use them as an excuse to be adventurous and experiment with new styles. Remember, Kyle and I are here for any questions that you have. Happy writing, and we look forward to reading your wonderful submissions. Good luck, bye!